For my midterm project, I have decided to continue to add to my visual journal or altered book that I had started for another class. This project is dear to me because I have seen it take action before my eyes with my own students. The visual journal is a reflective piece that encourages a person to relate to their everyday experiences and to express them visually. I thought that this would be a great way to visually express my learning experiences throughout this course so far. As John Dewey suggests, give the pupil something to do, not something to learn. And the doing is of such a nature as to demand thinking, or the intentional noting of connections. Learning naturally results. This spread in my visual journal takes inspiration from the readings in Module 1. The learning objectives for this module focus on the concept of play and playfulness in creative growth. The blog post that is affiliated with the idea of play in the learning environment poses an interesting question. Is the classroom environment that the students are exposed to a process-oriented space with room to make mistakes and grow? This is something that truly speaks to me because I am a firm believer in experiential learning and feel that in the process it should feel like play, because if I have read and heard before, children learn more freely when they are subconsciously doing so. There are a few portions of this spread that I want to point out and where their inspiration came from. My artistic focus was to make this spread look playful, but also to have a looming sense that there is something stopping the creativity, the freedom of experience, and the process of learning through play. In resource number 3 of Module 1, the idea of play is tested. Adults are feeling that play is a distraction from learning, and this is where the ruling hand comes into my visual representation. This idea that play is anarchy is brought up in Resource 4, stating that play couldn't be mayhem, but rather that it is in fact riddled with rules and structure. I really wanted to hone in on the idea presented in Resource 2, that nothing is a mistake, no win, no fail, there is only make. This speaks to me because just as Elliot Eisner also points out, our world is not one that submits to a single correct answer. The arts celebrate multiple perspectives. One of their large lessons is that there are many ways to interpret the world. The sensory, fascinating, experiential learning that takes place in play is not found elsewhere in the development of a child. With play, a child is developing holistically, drawing ideas from their own experiences and further developing themselves creatively and artistically in the process. Spread 2 of my visual journal takes inspiration from resources in Module 2. In this module, we focused on theories presented by Piaget, Vygotsky, and Steiner. We learned about the stages of child development and painting approaches of arts-based curriculums seen in Waldorf, Reggio Emilia, and Bank Street schools. Theorists Piaget, Vygotsky, and Steiner inspired the curriculums of these aforementioned arts-based schools. Each part of my visual representation speaks to the philosophy inspired by these theorists. I was most inspired by the educational theories presented in the Reggio Emilia approach, inspired by Vygotsky. The depiction of the fetus inside of a mother's womb is there to symbolize that the parent is the first teacher, and as Piaget points out in Resource 2, development begins long before we are even born, that our genetics and environment influence our cognitive development and intellectual progression. The flowers bursting from the belly button, inspired by Resource 5, show the limitless potential and growth for one to be curious, creative, and critical thinkers. Piaget questions and demonstrates how knowledge grows in the observations seen in the video resource number 3. We see this development take action with the flower and glass activity, among others. In resource number 7, we are reminded that painting goes beyond art and aesthetics and that it is viewed and should be viewed as a cognitive tool for a higher symbolic expression. The choice of placement for this spread in the title chapter, Trip Over the Truth, was determined by a quote from Steiner in Resource 6. The need for imagination, a sense of truth, a feeling of responsibility, these are 3 forces which are the very nerve of pedagogy. As Professor Caracciolo pointed out in response to my post for this week's module, the good news is that as art educators, we do not have to choose a single approach, but can remain open to a range of ideas, theories, and beliefs, as we have seen. Each pedagogy, theory, and process focus on the limitless potential of the child, and that is the most important. My third spread was inspired by the resources presented in Module 3. Throughout this module, we were introduced to the idea of creating experiential, process-based learning spaces and environments. As mentioned in Resource 2, early childhood years are the most precious, and that during this time, they are building the foundation for the rest of their lives. The environment needs to be sensory and emotional. It needs to combine the familiar and the unfamiliar. As mentioned in Resource number 4, as early childhood educators, we have to reinvent scenes from other areas of our students' lives, giving them ample space to learn through their own discoveries, and as stated in Resource number 5, motivate them to push the boundaries of their knowledge. I really enjoyed the focus of learning spaces in this module. I used my ideal classroom sketch as an overlay on a seafoam green background. I wanted to call out the text that was on the page before I started painting. This idea of creating moments is the focus of the book, but I also thought that it had a particular connection with the topic of this spread. As mentioned in Resource 6, in creating a space where children are unaware that they are learning academic content, we are expected to give them opportunities to make moments of elevated understanding and interest, moments of insight, moments of pride, moments of connection, because learning is not solitary and we benefit from our interaction with others. My ideal classroom focuses on the development of the whole child, socially, emotionally, physically, cognitively, and in areas of literacy. My final spread is a visual representation of childhood development and creative growth in visual art, theater, music, and dance that were discussed in Module 4, 5, and 6. I decided to include them all on the same spread because I feel that all of these arts modalities help children to advance and evolve their social, cognitive, aesthetic, and metacognitive processes of development. Where each offers its own process, the developmental benchmarks provided by New York State all promote similar stages of development. I wanted to highlight on the myth mentioned in Module 6, Resource 6, that arts education is for the gifted and the talented. This is not the case, and something I want to point out is that even without an artistic gift, with the help of education in the arts, one will become a well-rounded citizen who can apply skills, knowledge, and experience gained from being involved in the arts to their future careers and lives. Also mentioned in Resource 6 of Module 6, we need to use the body as a tool of learning, making note of the internal and external factors that affect the child's artistic development in Resource 2 of Module 4. With arts education, a child can become actively engaged in their learning process, entering into an imaginative world of their own creation. In my spread, I used 4 groups of figures to symbolize the arts modalities. Children working together in a drama game to represent theater, a child painting for art, leaping and moving for dance, and drums for music. I used index cards to create the word art using symbols from my own arts education focus. The lined paper is meant to represent how the arts transcend boundaries of assessment. Also, due to me being a visual arts educator, I extended the painting of the young child across the spread, showing variations in lines, shape, and symbols. These symbols, however, can also exemplify ideals carried out across multiple arts modalities, including theater, music, and dance. The defining moments that stem from arts education are the more we have been searching for. This spread of awareness across the spread symbolizes the turning point in what should be valued as good, holistic education. Visual art, theater, music, and dance have numerous cross-disciplinary benefits. The engagement involved, and as Module 6, Resource 4 points out, the movement allows children to connect concepts to actions. Inspired by Waldorf, we must focus on the whole child, the heart, the head, and the hands. The National Association for Music Education states that music, and I believe all arts education, uplifts the human spirit and provides opportunities for all students to create, perform, respond, and connect. Although art can sometimes be left to the interpretation of the viewer, I think that it is important for us to reflect on our process, to practice our various skills, and to make art cross-disciplinary. In lieu of that, I use this visual journal to make art relevant to my experiences and new knowledge, because after all, like John Dewey suggests, we are shaped by experience, and so experience is also then the best tool for helping people gain new understanding. I hope that you have enjoyed my visual journal midterm project, and I look forward to hearing back from you with feedback.